And welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to each and every one of you. It is a pleasure and honor for me to host this session. So welcome to this gathering of the Neuro-Semantics community from all over the world. I am Mazuki. I'm a Neuro-Semantics trainer and meta coach. This, as you know, is the ISNS Neuro-Semantics Wisdoms meeting. The purpose of these Neuro-Semantics Wisdoms meetings is to have a stronger connection between our international society, the Neuro-Semantics Institutes, and members. It is also a platform for us to refresh our knowledge of neurosemantics, to recharge and be inspired with new meanings, and also to increase our collaboration, and equally importantly, for us to have lots and lots of fun. So I wish to honor your presence today by greeting each and every one of you through the National Institute. So let me just put on the screen. There it is. No, where's my screen? Zoom keeps moving things around. Documents, advance. Yes. Okay. There we go. So I'd like to honor each and every one of you for being here, and I would like to do that through the Neuro-Semantics Institute. So get ready to unmute your mics now, so that when I call out your National Institute, I'd like you to just wish everyone here in your local language. Okay? So unmute your mic so that we can honor everyone by loudly greeting. So are you ready? We begin with the Institute of Neurosemantics, Africa. So welcome, Africa. And next is the Institute of Neurosemantics, Australia. Welcome, Australia, from down under. And
Ozzy, oi, oi.
hey, go Della. I recognize the
Yeah,
voice.
it's me.
And the Institute of Neurosemantics, Brazil. Welcome, Brazil.
Bom dia, bom dia, bom dia. Olá, todo mundo. Bom dia.
Thank you. And Institute of Neurosemantics, Egypt, Middle East, and North Africa. Let's give a big hand to all of them. Yes. And next is the Institute of Neurosemantics, Europe and Scandinavia. Welcome. Hello, Eric. Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics, Hong Kong and China. Welcome.
大家好。
And also welcome to those in China who's in the other room, the Mandarin room, and also the Institute of Neurosemantics Indonesia. Selamat
Halo
Indonesia.
semua. Selamat malam.
Selamat malam. Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics Latin America and Mexico.
Hola.
Hola.
Buenos días.
Next is the Institute of Neurosemantics, Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore. Yay! Selamat datang semua. And next is the Institute of Neurosemantics, USA. Let's give a big hand. USA. Welcome, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be seeing all of you on screen today. Now, this meeting is scheduled for about 90 minutes. The presentation will take about 45 minutes. And the topic of the presentation is, if someone says, let me give you feedback, run like hell. Okay. the topic for today. So, and we'll be having two discussions. We'll break out into two breakout rooms, and then we'll come back here to wrap things up after the presentation. Now, I would like to recommend to you that to not just be here for the presentation, also be here for the discussions in order to get the maximum value from the meeting. So before I invite Michael to present this topic, I'd like you to know that Michael and Geraldine are now training ACMC in Mauritius. So I'm so grateful that Michael is able to organize his schedule to be with us online, thanks to Bruno and Muhammad taking care of the training room for the time being. It's just that Michael will need to leave right after the presentation, so we'll have the discussions without Michael here, and Adrian has agreed that he'll take over after that. Is that correct, Adrian?
You say so? Yes.
Yeah, he's kidding. So without further ado, over to you, Michael, on the topic of if someone says, let me give you feedback, run like hell. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Marzuki. And thank you, everybody, for coming and being a part of this. And it is a delight for Geraldine and I to do this from Mauritius and from the ACMC training that's going on. We've got about 50 some people upstairs in the training, and Mohammed Tariq and Bruno are leading it with the social panorama. You remember the social panorama? That's what they're doing right now upstairs. I thought that I'd like to speak about the subject of feedback because it's such a critical piece of all of our lives, and yet there's just something problematic about feedback for most people. Even though we say feedback is the breakfast of champions, most of us do not have a good breakfast of feedback on a regular basis.
Okay.
So I want to talk about this thing called feedback and how to think about it in a way that we can use it to really take our skills to more competence and even to expertise. And it's interesting that this week, the Olympics are going on in Paris, and if there's anybody who knows about feedback, it's the Olympic champions, because they're there because they've got some kind of relationship to feedback that keeps accelerating their skills and taking them to that expert level. So what do they know about feedback that maybe we're missing that lets them really use it to accelerate their learning and to unleash their potentials? So our first slide in our presentation here is the NLP statement that we've all heard. There is no failure, there's only feedback. The NLP presupposition. And what a great idea. No failure, just feedback, just information, just the result of what we've done. But now, a lot of people have exchanged the fear of failure for the fear of feedback. That may include you a little bit. Sometimes here at ACMC, when we first give feedback to people, there is a sense of apprehension, of fear, of worry, of anxiety. And so now they're not afraid of failure, they're afraid of feedback. So feedback, how do people respond to feedback? Well, here's 4 ways that people respond. They're shocked. It may disrupt their thinking and their feeling. It may be so disruptive that they didn't have that sense of themselves when the feedback came, or they get angry, or they turn in on themselves and get depressed, or they just reject it. It's not true, and so they throw it away. Our next slide. For many, feedback has become semantically loaded with lots of negative connotations and emotions, and the feedback is interpreted negatively. And so if you look at these lines, people think feedback means I'm wrong, I'm bad, I'm flawed, I made a mistake, can't do anything right. And if you look at that, that's what failure has meant to many people. And now we've just exchanged it so that what we used to think about failure, now we're thinking about feedback. And so failure has snuck back in under the guise of feedback. So there's also this experience, and it's the title of presentation. Sometimes when people say to you and I, let me give you some feedback. Actually, they don't mean feedback. They mean judgment, evaluation, opinion, rejection of whatever we're saying. And so we just don't want to hear it, or it becomes fighting language for other people. So we've got a problem with feedback, and we need to recover what it really is so that we can understand it and use it to accelerate our learning. So our next slide is what has happened in businesses and organizations, the feedback sandwich. What's the feedback sandwich? Well, first of all, the top slice of that bread is nice words and warm welcome and praise. Then we give judgment. And then we close it with that under slice of some compliments and well wishes. And of course, all of this implies that this feedback sandwich implies you can't take it straight. So I'm going to soften it. I'm going to warm things up for you. And then I'm say some nice things at the end because you can't take it straight. That's what it implies. And it implies that feedback essentially is negative and you don't want to hear it. So in neurosemantics, in meta coaching, we encourage people stop this feedback sandwich stuff and learn what feedback really is and learn to appreciate it like a champion would. So our next slide, ideally, feedback should elicit these 5 things. First of all, acceptance, because the feedback is just facts, sensory-based facts, whatever it is. That's what it is, that's what it is. So it should elicit in us acceptance, humility, because we know we're fallible. So we're not expecting perfection. And so humility is a sense of modesty of, oh, okay, so here's something I could do better. Learning, and that's the key thing. If feedback elicited learning, then I start to get excited about it and joyous about it. So that would lead to excitement about what's my next steps. And if I have next steps, then this leads to know-how about improvement and progress. In the meta coaching manual, one of the quotations I put in there on the skill of receiving feedback is this quotation from D. Hawk. D. Hawk invented Visa. He created the Visa organization, and he wrote this book that's mentioned there on this slide. And he said this about mistakes. He said they're toothless little things. If you recognize them and correct them. If you ignore and defend them, they grow fangs and bite. So the idea is, ideally, feedback should elicit these kinds of states in which we can then make good use of feedback. So what is feedback? That's our next slide. What is it really? Well, there's several ways of defining it. And at the very core is it's information. It's information that lets you know what happened after you did some response. It's information that tells you that you did or did not reach your goal or objective when you made that response. So that's what it is. It's information. It's also the second half of the stimulus response communication loop. The first is feed forward as we do something. Feed forward a word, a comment, a behavior, a relationship. We feed it forward, and then we wait to see what happens. And feedback is the second loop of the communication loop, and it lets us know, did it work? Did it not work? So all of this is neutralizing, or at least I hope it's neutralizing our idea of what feedback is. Another wonderful definition of feedback is that it's a mirror. It's a mirror that reflects back whatever we've offered. So when something comes back, it's like a mirror, and just like a mirror, send your image into the mirror, and what comes back is the mirror image feedback. And so who's afraid of the mirror? So most of us, when we get up in the morning, we get in front of a mirror, and it's really critical for us to see, is our hair combed? Do we need to shave? Do we need to put on makeup? The mirror tells us to present ourselves in a better way. So the next slide is a picture of this mirroring feedback. And if you think of feedback, this picture of standing in front of a mirror and receiving the reflection. So that's what feedback is. It's just mirroring back what you've sent out into the world so that you can see it and then respond. So what is feedback? Well, our next slide, it's a process that's occurring whenever you do something. So if you're taking action in the world, if you're saying something, thinking something, feeling something, doing something, relating something, feedback is just the process that occurs when you do that. So you act, and feedback is the world letting you know that there's an effect. Isn't that wonderful? You make a difference. You are getting some results from the world. And that means you have power. So feedback is proof that what you're doing makes a difference. So from what you do, there's results. And this means that in the drama of life, we are actors in the drama of life. So feedback is the results of your actions. It's your effect in the world. So who's afraid of feedback? If it's the result of your actions, if it's your power and your effect of making a difference in the world. So now we can ask about the importance of feedback, and that's our next slide. The importance of feedback. Let's consider the opposite. If you acted and there was no feedback, if you acted and you get no feedback, then you can't tell things went. You can't tell I hit my target or I didn't hit my target. You can't develop your skills because you don't know what to improve. You don't know what would make a difference. If you act and you get no feedback, then you can't tell if you're succeeding. So no feedback, no success. So we need feedback. If you can't tell that you're not succeeding, then you'd be in the dark. Be blind to it. And if there's no feedback, then you cannot train neurology to know the difference and to make the skill by repetition automatic. Without feedback, there'd be no science. Without feedback, we're in a dead zone. So all of this is leading to wanting to have more feedback. So I'm going to make a distinction now between three kinds of feedback. And the first kind, we go to the next slide. Imagine if you were bowling blindfolded. So you throw the ball, and if you're blindfolded, you can't see the results. So you're waiting, you listen for the sound of the ball. Does it hit anything? Does anything fall down? Does the ball go into the gutter? Imagine bowling blindfolded. How much fun would that be? How enjoyable would it be? How could you play a game with somebody? How much would you want to go back and bowl again blindfolded. Or the next slide, imagine shooting hoops blindfolded. So once again, you wouldn't even know what direction to throw the ball if you were throwing it blindfolded. So without feedback, there can be no great performances. So for me, that really motivates me to want to make feedback the breakfast of champions, because it's feedback that lets me know how I'm doing. So the next slide summarizes all of this. Without feedback. Without feedback, you're operating blindly, without awareness of what you're doing or how you're doing it. Without feedback, it makes us ignorant to any progress or improvement or how to improve what we're doing. Without feedback, not only are we blind and ignorant, but we're helpless to know how to take our skills to the next level. Without feedback, we're doomed. Keep doing whatever we're doing, even if it's not working. And if we don't have feedback, then we're confused, maybe thinking that feedback is a threat or a danger. So what a pathetic statement, what a pathetic state not having feedback puts us in. It puts us out of touch with what we can do. So, three kinds of feedback. The first one is immediate feedback, and that's our next slide. And what I've written here is that everybody loves immediate feedback, don't you? You throw a basket, and when you throw that basket, it's just almost simultaneous. You just wait a second, and you see if it goes in the basket or not. If you throw the bowling ball, you got to wait a little bit longer. You got that moment of waiting. Is it going to hit the middle? Is it going to hit the pins? Is it going to knock it down? So there's that excitement of the suspension as you wait to see what happens. There's immediate feedback when you get dressed in front of a mirror. This morning I tied my tie. I put the tie over, flipped it over, and in front of the mirror I could ensure that it was getting the results that I wanted. So immediate feedback, everybody can love that. Imagine shooting an arrow at a target. Once again, the time that you wait for that feedback is just almost nothing. It's almost immediate. Imagine backing up a car without looking behind you where you're backing, or using the camera to know how to back that up. Without feedback, you were in the blind. And those of us who speak to people, or when you're with friends and you're telling a joke, when you see that people get it and laugh, telling the joke, that feedback that comes back immediately, you love it. So feedback is calibrating to the moment, to the effect that you're creating. So it's a form of calibration, feedback. And everybody loves immediate feedback. Now, sometimes the feedback takes a little bit longer. So our next slide, even short-term feedback, you can learn to love. The bowling ball, now we got to wait a few seconds. It's not so immediate. With coaching, you set a frame, you do an intervention, and you may have to wait a little while to see what's the effect. And while you're waiting, it's a short-term wait. You don't have to wait a long time. A little bit longer would be if you video recorded yourself doing something, coaching, training, playing tennis, playing golf. And then if you watch that recording an hour later, a day later, even that kind of short-term feedback, you have to wait, but you don't have to wait too long. And the waiting can be with bated breath as you're wondering what's going to happen. So that can create that excitement. Our next slide, sometimes you have to wait longer. Now we've got long-term feedback. So here's an example of, you got a headache, you take an aspirin. How long do you have to wait? You have to wait 2 minutes, 30 minutes? You have to wait an hour? So as you wait, now in this long-term feedback, waiting for the result, waiting for the relief, how will you tell, how can you tell that you're getting relief from the headache? How would you measure that relief? How do you gauge the headache was this intense and now it's this and now it's this? So the quality of the measurement. And this is what makes, I think, feedback difficult for us sometimes, the period of waiting till we get the results. And so this is where patience, anticipation, willingness to hold the space while we're waiting for that result. There's another kind of feedback, and that's mediated feedback. Everything we've talked about so far is immediate and not mediated. So our next slide is mediated feedback. That is, the feedback is being mediated through someone else. It's not your eyes and ears that's watching the ball go into the basket. It's not your eyes and ears watching yourself get dressed in front of the mirror. Now the response is going to come back to us through the eyes and the ears of another person. Mediated feedback. So as it goes through the eyes and ears of someone else, the mind and the heart of someone else, it's filtered. Filtered feedback. It's being filtered by their beliefs, their values, their experiences, their relationship to you. And so now what we call feedback, more often than not, is not feedback, but it's judgment. It's mind reading. It's opinions. It's evaluations. So it's mediated feedback that causes us, all of us, the most trouble because it's contaminated by the filters that it goes through. And so we receive this feedback, but it's not clean. It's not clear. It's quite contaminated. So our next slide is about this contamination. Contaminated or not contaminated. Unless a person's been trained in how to give sensory-based feedback, the feedback will be contaminated to some extent. So it's usually contaminated by some kind of a judgment. And actually, when it is contaminated by judgment, evaluation, opinion, mind reading, then it's actually pseudo feedback, not actually feedback, certainly not high quality feedback. It's quite contaminated. So the question becomes, if you know it's contaminated, do you know how to take into consideration the person's beliefs, values, opinions, agendas, biases, so as to wonder what part of it is sensory-based and what part of it is not? Because if you can, then you can start asking those kinds of questions to get to the heart of the feedback, the actual sensory-based information. So if what we need is high quality feedback, because that's what's missing, high quality feedback, then what is that? So our next slide has the list of 7 things that make for high quality feedback. If you've taken meta coaching, you've seen this because it's in the manual, and it's the criteria by which we evaluate good feedback or filtered and mediated and contaminated. So is it sensory based? That is, can I see and hear and sense what they're saying? So is it behavioral? Is it empirical? So that's the key factor. If it is sensory based, is it precise enough so that it gives me a next step, something I can do about it? Is it timely? Is it given to me when I need it? So as immediate as possible, closing that time gap. Because if it comes later, if it comes much later, then it's not so useful. So in real time is when quality feedback occurs. Is it relevant to something important to me? Is it relevant to an outcome? Is it relevant to what I'm attempting to do? So the relevance of it. It may be sensory-based, it may be precise, it may be timely, but if it's irrelevant, if it's like, so what? How is that going to help me? Feedback that is high quality will be given if it's mediated through another person with rapport, with care, with compassion, and with no judgment. So this makes it easy to accept and receive because we know the person has our best interests at heart and they're really wanting to help. And so they get rapport, make sure that it's relevant to us and there's that relationship that sustains it. Number 6 is actionable. So I get the feedback. What can I do about it? And if I can't answer that question, or if the answer is nothing I can do about it, then once again, it's not high quality feedback. It's not actionable. And then finally, tentative. If it's given to you by another person, if you give it to someone, make it tentative. It's your mirror. And that depends on how clean and how clear your mirror is. So make it tentative. It's not absolute. And so don't be rigid, don't be dogmatic. It's the best you can do with your senses, what you see and hear and sense. And so make it tentative. So high quality feedback is our way of cleaning up contaminated feedback so that we can offer it as cleanly as possible. So high quality feedback is what we need to replace that. So now I think you can understand, it helps me to understand our love-hate relationship with feedback. So our next slide. We have a love-hate relationship, do we not? So we hate it that it makes us wrong. We love it for how it makes us better. We hate it that it reveals our flaws and weaknesses. I don't like that. But we love it that it forecasts a much brighter future. We hate it when we have to make corrections. We love it when it moves us toward expertise. Those corrections move us toward expertise. We hate it if it facilitates self-judgment, but we love it for self-efficiency. We hate it when we worry about our reputation and what other people think about us. We love it when it helps us to develop our own internal referencing. So our love-hate relationship with feedback. So our next slide invites your questions. What questions do you have about feedback? If we do a deep dive into this, what questions do you have? And the next slide, what have you learned? So I'll open that up to everybody.
Thank you, Michael, for that presentation. Let me just stop share first. Okay. And I would like to invite any questions from anyone. If you have any questions, then Michael will be only too happy to answer them. So who has the first question?
Michael, I have a question. I'm Siu Hong. It's regarding this feedback. I remember when I was in the organization, they introduced a STAR feedback, STARR, some kind of the model of the feedback. And I realized that there are many models of feedback. So do we have any kind of that relation? If we were asked to compare what kind of model we are offering, do we have such kind of models? Or I mean, what's the difference between those models? What do you think about the models that the market is offering, especially like STAR model?
I have no idea what STAR stands for,
Oh, mhm.
but the seven distinctions we just covered of high quality feedback is the model. Sensory-based, precise, actionable, relevant, attentive. That's the model. That's how to give high quality, good feedback.
Okay. I think there's one thing that I realized in the STAR model. They talk about the result, the STAR, the R stuff of result. It says that describe the consequences and why the action was ineffective. Do you think this is one of the things that we should include in the feedback? Describe the consequences and why the action was ineffective.
Well,
What do
now
you think
you're
about
getting
that?
into something. Now you're getting into something very different. What's the consequences of standing in front of a mirror? You see what works, you see what doesn't work. What's the consequences of throwing hoops? You see when it fits, when it doesn't. If the ball doesn't go in, maybe go a little bit to the left. If it still doesn't go in, maybe a little bit more to the left. So feedback, by its very definition, is the results. That's what I started with, and that's how we defined it. It's the results you're getting. And the results may fit your outcome, it may not fit your outcome. Depends on the outcome. And so results shows up as precise information, specific information, step-by-step information, actionable information. So that's why I go back to the 7 key distinctions of high quality feedback. When you have that, you have the distinctions when it works, when it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Siu Hong. Are there any other questions? There is one question here from Donald. What are the tools for guiding feedback? Is humor the best tool?
Well, the best. So now we go to states, and I think one of the slides recommended acceptance, humility, learning, excitement, and a sense of progress. So if those are your states, if that's what you're trying to do, because ideally that's what feedback should elicit: acceptance, humility, fallibility, learning, excitement. That's the best way to receive and give feedback. We can add humor to it. Humor would make good sense. We have to be careful with humor, because if people are taking feedback in a negative way, they may think the humor is laughing at them or mocking them. So we have to be really careful that way. If the humor is back to yourself, then that's perfectly fine. But anytime people are receiving information about how they did something or how they're coming across, their self-image is at stake. Maybe their self-esteem is at stake. Maybe their relationships at stake. So a lot of things can be at stake, and therefore it can be risky. And so if you're operating from a sense of care and compassion, you're doing it because you really have the other person's agenda and interests at heart, then it'll be received well. And if you make it tentative, so if they can't receive it, and a lot of times people can't, if they can't receive it, say, oh, okay, maybe I missed it. I'll try again sometime later.
Thank you, Michael. And are there any other questions?
Just a comment, actually. Hi, Michael. Rodrigo here from Brazil. I remember once Marshall Goldsmith said that the feedback has such a weight already to it culturally. Like if people hear feedback, as you say, it's already expecting something bad. So one of the things he proposed is like to actually change the name of feedback to give something else that doesn't have this weight, just a immediately relief of the feedback per se. Just a little clues that he was giving with corporations, things like that, to change the cultural name of it.
Yeah. And if I were to do that, I would call feedback results. It's the results you get when you look in a mirror, results you get when you toss a ball. It's the results that you get when you set a frame or you do an intervention with a client. Results.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And we're always getting results. You cannot not get some results. So every time you communicate, however you communicate, you're going to get some results. Now, those results will be partly your responsibility and partly their responsibility. Because the meaning of your communication is the response you get. And so all you can do is to offer your part. They interpret it, they filter it. And so, but you're always getting results. And if we want different results, we have to pay attention to the results we're getting and how to do something different that'll get a different response, different results.
Thank you. And are there any other questions?
Yes, Michael. Is that possible to push employee to give feedback to the boss when we do the team coaching? And the second question is what a coach can do in this situation. I think it's dangerous, right?
Well, make sure that all the feedback you give to the boss meets those 7 high quality distinctions. Do it tentatively, do it century based, do it specifically, do it in a way that's relevant and has next steps. So if you use that's the power of those 7 distinctions of high quality feedback. That when you give feedback in that way, you can hardly ever go wrong.
So we need to let those know what it's really it's the high quality feedback, right?
Right.
Okay.
And if you do it tentatively, then you're not pushing. You're just saying, here's how it's striking me. I could be wrong. Here's how it's striking me. And here's a specific behavior, specific thing, specific word, specific tone that was done at a certain time that you could video record. And you say, to me, it seems like this is not helping you as a boss, not helping you as a manager. And then we'll see what results we get. They might be able to accept it. They may not. I think we can pretty well anticipate a lot of people are not ready to face reality.
Yeah.
And you're presenting something real. So just do it tentatively. And if they go into anger, shock, depression, rejection, which is so common, then say, oh, okay, maybe I missed it. I'll try it again next time. And you just keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and slowly it gets through a person's filters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question?
Just one thing that actually came from Michael, and I think is very relevant to mention, is that you mentioned once, Michael, that the importance to let the person know that's receiving the feedback, to let them know that it's not about you as a human. You as a human, I love it. It's about the behavior. It's about the specific things. So just from the get-go to separate those two things.
Yeah. With some people, that's really an important point. With some people, you have to say, now, everything I'm going to say is not about you as a person. And you have to repeat that again and again. because some people personalize so quickly. They just, so you have to say that and say it's about behavior. And yeah, so that's really a significant point. Those of us who have made that separation, I'm more than my behavior. So talk about my behavior because I want to improve it. Talk about my talk, the way I relate, the things I'm doing. Talk about that because I'm open to, because I'm fallible, and whatever point out that's inadequate in me is okay because I'm more than that.
Thank you, Michael. So we have a question. Oh, that question has been deleted already. I can't find that question anymore in the chat. If people are not ready to receive feedback, they defense feedback. How should we do? They're defensive about the feedback. So what should we do?
Well, first of all, deal with the relationship. What is the relationship you have with that person? And why are you wanting to give feedback? So first of all, I have to do that. If it's in a coaching context and it's a client and you're giving feedback, how you would want to give that is, let me give you some feedback. It may fit, it may not. That's that tentativeness. It may fit, may not fit. Here's what I saw and heard. And once again, if they deny it, say, oh, okay, maybe I missed it. When it comes up again, and it will, because people are systemic and they're systematic, it will come up. And so you do it again. Oh, here's that behavior. And let me give you some feedback. And sometimes you have to do that 3 times, 7 times, 21 times before it gets through a person's defense mechanisms. So this is where patience and persistence comes in. And if it's sensory based, it will come up again and again. And just as Rodrigo said, also say, I'm not talking about you as a person. I'm talking about this behavior. And then you can ask a lot of meta questions. Do you like that behavior? And helping them to get through that. If you don't have a relationship with someone and you like a family member and you want to give feedback, well, they ask them, I got something I'd like to say to you. It's some feedback that I think would be helpful. Would you like to hear it? If they say no, then shut your mouth. Do not give it to them. Now, what most of the family members will do or friends will do is say, well, what is it? No, if you're not ready to receive it, I don't give it to you. And don't give it to them until they're ready to receive it. Because if they're not ready to receive it, they're not ready to receive it. So don't waste your time. Hold it until they're ready. If they say, well, what is it about? Well, it's about some behavior that I think is undermining some of your effectiveness. So that's where you set a relevant outcome frame. I think it would improve if you change this, but if you're not ready to hear it, so if they say, okay, I'm ready. Okay, what state are you in? Are you open? Are you receptive? Are you calm? Are you relaxed? Are you not personalizing? Okay, so I'm going to start to give it to you. If they become defensive, let's go, well, obviously this is not the time and place for you to receive it. So enough is enough. Because if you try to impose your feedback on anybody, there's going to be a fight.
Yeah, I have a question. I was just wondering because giving and receiving feedback, I mean, it's a skill.
It's a skill.
And so in terms of learning in a family context, like in parenting or in school with teachers, students, so how best to learn it and or even nurture it? I mean, like what exercises can be done? Because what commonly happens is, people personalize or they're not ready, or it's a way to exert authority.
Well, the best way to learn it and how we teach it in meta coaching is we we, uh, we set up a situation to where someone is going to give feedback to some criteria. And in meta coaching, it's to the coaching criteria. In trainers, it's to the training criteria. It could be to leadership criteria. It could be to teacher criteria. So here's criteria for being a good teacher. I'm going to give feedback to that criteria, not to my criteria, but to the criteria of a good teacher or a good parent or whatever. Good parents do this, and so I'm going to give you some feedback. Then evaluate your feedback with those 7 distinctions. Is it specific, sensory specific? Is it precise? Is it specific? Is it action-oriented, actionable? Is it relevant? Is it tentative? So evaluate your communication to see if you're doing it with high quality distinctions. And the more you practice that, the better you'll get.
So it's like the importance of the criteria. What are you basing your feedback on?
Yeah.
Right.
Every once in a while, someone will say to me, you're a writer, so give me some feedback on my writing. And it's impossible. What do you want me to give you feedback on? The style of writing, the quality of the content, the structure that you've chosen, the predicates that you're using, first person, second person, voice. What do you want me to give you feedback on? Because I can give you feedback on lots of things that you're using paragraphs or separate sentences. So tell me the criteria by which you want me to give you some feedback. Because otherwise, I'll give you feedback according to my values. And it may fit, it may not fit.
Thank you, Michael. There's a comment here from Maureen. Yes, there's always a fight in the classrooms when teachers give feedback to the students to keep their phone away, even though it's been communicated repeatedly. There's one comment from Maureen there. And from Leona here, in the case of a leader who is going to give feedback to his subordinate about a behavior or result, which needs to be considered in addition to what has been discussed so far?
So the other consideration is when a leader is going to give feedback to somebody who's subordinate, do it privately. Take it offline. You only give feedback publicly when there is a public forum and someone is doing something publicly, and you might then give some feedback. But taking it offline is so much better. Then people aren't embarrassed. People aren't put on the spot. Because put someone on the spot, embarrass people, and they'll be defensive. Even if what you're saying they fully agree with, in that context, it embarrasses. And there's a sense of threat. So taking it offline is an important part for anybody with a higher position to another person to take it offline at first and do it privately. People will feel safer if they do that.
What about in a group meeting setup?
Well, the same thing. In a group, if someone starts a lot of resistance in a group, my first thing is, John, let's talk about this at the break. Let's take this offline. Now, if John is being nasty and hurtful and ugly to somebody else in the group, I would do that publicly. John, if I said to you what you just said to Bob, how would you feel? If I said, I think what you're doing, you're an idiot and you don't understand, how would you feel, John? So I would stop John from hurting Bob or anybody else in the group, interrupt that, and then I might say, Bob and John, let's meet on the break together, and there's some kind of conflict going on. Let's work it out. But taking things offline in a group or from an authority structure, I think is one of the key factors of good confrontation and good feedback.
So there has to be an environment of safety and trust in giving feedback.
Exactly. That's why what Rodriguez said earlier, it's not about you as a person, because otherwise the person's not going to be safe. They're going to feel threatened and they'll be defensive, and naturally so.
Thank you, Michael. And this is where we come to the discussion sessions. Now, since for the benefit of those who were not here at the beginning, Michael and Geraldine are currently in Mauritius for the ACMC, and their time now is 6 in the evening. That's when Michael will be meeting the team leaders for the ACMC. So before we let Michael go to that meeting, Michael, would you like to say a few words to summarize today's presentation?
You're always getting results. I'm always getting results. I may not like the results, I get them. It's feedback. And if I welcome the feedback and am committed to my own growth and awareness of my own fallibility, then the feedback can be the breakfast of champions. And it can lead us to more competence, more expertise, more development. And if we create a community, the neurosemantic community, as a community where we give feedback to each other because we care and we really want to see each person develop their very best, then it becomes a community where we're not afraid of feedback. It's just the results I'm getting at this moment, and it gives me my next step for developing. And so let's make feedback our breakfast foods and learn how to develop really some expertise through that.
Thank you, Michael and Geraldine, and everyone. Let's give Michael and Geraldine a big hand. Thank you for your generosity of time being here, even though you're running that ACMC. So, Michael, have fun in the meeting with the team leaders, and we are going to have fun here in the breakout room. So, stay back for a short while we give another big round of applause to Michael and Geraldine. Thank you very much.
See everybody later.
See you.
Best.
Now, so we are going to go to the breakout rooms, and I'm going to, share with you the questions that we are going to have for the breakout room. So the first breakout room, and the first breakout room, the questions are: what state do you access when you think about feedback? How well does it support you in tapping into the power of feedback? And second question is, what do you need to think, believe, or understand so that you can receive feedback in a more positive way and even become hungry for it? So I've also sent the questions, and it should be in your chat box right now. So let's go to the breakout rooms for about 12 minutes. Have fun in the discussion. Remember, when you first get into the room, introduce yourself to the people in the room. I'm scheduling about 5 or 6 people per room. So have fun, and I'll see you here in the main room in 12 minutes time. So yeah, okay. So see you in 12 minutes time, and make sure that you've downloaded the questions. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had a good time in your discussion room. And let's take a few minutes so that I can hear anything significant, anything that struck you during the discussion just now. So I'd like to open up to anyone. Yes, I believe all the people are back in. So anybody who would like to start? Just unmute your mic and oh yes, more people coming in now. Okay, good. So welcome back, everyone. And in the next few minutes before we go to our second breakout room, let me hear what you discussed. Something somebody said about the 2 questions. So let me hear. Who would like to start off? Suddenly stand quiet. Oh, Adrian, go ahead, Adrian.
In our team, most of us were kind of defensive towards feedback. But the last question was very important because we decided, or all of us mentioned that we should have a state of openness, flexibility, curiosity, so that we could get this feedback. And as Jokni said, it is because sometimes they care about us. So for the ones that are defensive, like me sometimes, when I was run the power zone pattern, I decided what to filter in and to check, and what things I could leave out when it was about judgment. But I think that feedback, or all of us thought that feedback was a good tool at the end.
Thank you, Adrian. Anyone else has got something to share about what you discussed in the rooms? Go ahead, Enric. You have something?
Well, I was in the same group as Adrian, and I can just confirm that sometimes I can be defensive also, especially if it's like, you know, my ex-girlfriend wants to give me some feedback. Then it's like, okay, because it's if it isn't a training session and we have some criteria, I say, yeah, then I'm very open and I really want to receive the feedback. Sorry, it's like some people talking in a microphone here, in a loudspeaker. But yeah, if it is somebody telling me like, hey, Henrik, come into this room, and then they want to give me some feedback, and it's sometimes difficult to get it. So open the mind to be really curious about learning, willing to grow. Then I think that I'm ready to receive any kind of feedback, and I think that is the same for all of us in the group. We had, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And any other questions or comments?
I think one of the things we brought up was like when people are giving feedback, maybe we should sit back and think like, is there a positive intention behind that feedback? I think it's easy, being as transparent as we are, as to like, yes, we do get defensive, but we sit back a little while and say, is there a positive intention of why they're giving us the feedback? I mean, even with people without reports, that is this something to help us grow, or is it something that's just criticism and putting us down? But if we think of a positive intention, then maybe it's easier to swallow, to digest. Yeah, just my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Thank you, Della. For me, when I learn to receive feedback, especially at NSTT and ACMC, I began to love receiving feedback, because when we receive feedback from people who are skilled in giving feedback, it's such a joy, because it really allows us to grow. And I can't wait to receive feedback whenever I'm in that environment. Now, when I'm not sure if the person is skilled in giving feedback, then I'll need to put on the uninsultability pattern first. So that I don't get personal with whatever the person is going to feedback that is going to give. So I need to get myself ready. If the person is not skilled, then uninsultability pattern again in order for me to receive that. Okay, so are you ready to go for the next discussion? So for the next discussion, these are the questions. Whoops, have you got that? Oh, it's paused. Oh, okay. So what will you take away now that you know the difference? Keeps doing that. What will you take away now that you know the difference between immediate feedback and mediated feedback? And the second question is, what do you know? What do you now know about how to take feedback so that you can turn it into productive information for you? So those are the two questions, and I'd like to invite you to go into the breakout rooms, and I will recreate the rooms. Let's see, a few people have left, so I'm recreating so that there'll be about 6 people. However, if you do find yourself in a room where you are all by yourself, so just get out of the room and I can put you into another room. Okay, so enjoy yourself, and I'll see you in 12 minutes. Welcome back. I love your smile, Janice. It's so bright. Good. Welcome back, everyone. It's great to see you. And how was that discussion for you? Anyone would like to share something that you discussed in your room?
Matsuki,
Yes, Selena.
we are wondering about the immediate feedback. Do you able to share more what's the immediate feedback?
As I recall it, because that question should be asked to Michael. As I recall it, is that when you do something and you're able to see immediately what you have done, that's considered as immediate feedback. He gave the example of bowling. You can see the results. That's immediate feedback. The second part of immediate feedback, then he mentioned about there's a lag between your performance and you're seeing the result. That's the lag. Then he mentioned about mediated, meaning to say that you are not able to see it yourself because you are the one who's performing it. Then somebody gives you the feedback. That's the mediated feedback. So that's when this and mediated feedback may not be immediate. So there is a lag between your performance and for example, when you were learning in NSTT, so you give that presentation after 7 minutes, the trainer gives you feedback. So that's mediated feedback. So, and that one is not, that is also a lag. It is not immediate. It's just that even though it is not immediate, you are getting that feedback after your performance. So you are seeing that result at that time. That's what I understood. So anyone else would like to?
Marzuki, I would like to share is that the immediate feedback is something like you do your coaching and you do the recording. You can have an immediate feedback because you can see yourself. And immediate feedback means you have a benchmarker benchmarking you. It's through his eyes to benchmark you. So it's a difference between the immediate. If you want to take a difference, the example is this one. Immediate means like you get a feedback from the benchmarker. Immediate is that you got a feedback from the video. That means you do it, you see yourself with your own eyes. Yourself with your own eyes and own ears. You look at the video, you're looking at yourself performing. So that's immediate feedback. So I think this is the example.
Thank you, Xiu Hong.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else has got any things to share or comment? No? Going, gone. Just kidding. Okay, so maybe I don't know. I'm just almost at random over here. Pascal, is there anything that you would like to say about what's your takeaway from Michael's presentation this evening?
No, I don't think I have anything to say. It was very informative.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Nothing.
Yeah. So before we end, Adrian. So now I'm getting random. Adrian can take it. So Adrian, anything that you like to say before we end?
Well, yes, I think that most of us are meta coaches and we learn how to give and receive feedback. And if we use these skills, these abilities, we can give more accurate feedback. When I give feedback, I try to eliminate cognitive distortions. I don't use universal quantifiers, a little, never, some, etc. I prefer to use numbers. I start with frames, like this is not personal, take it, you have the right to filter, to take it and use it if you can, etc. And I do the same when I get feedback. I don't take it personal. As you say, we can use the uninsultability pattern, the power zone, and then we can, what they are seeing is maybe something that we cannot see because we have black spots. So I take some things into account, and then I choose what is good for me and what I can make into actions. So I think that is what I learned this day.
Thank you very much for that, Adrian. And we've come to the end of the session. I would like to say that I really Appreciate all of you being here. It is such an honor for me to be hosting this session, meeting all of you this evening. And just before we end, I'd just like to announce that our next Wisdom session meeting will be on the 14th of September. Still the second Saturday of the month, so on the 14th of September. So I hope to be seeing all of you here again in a month's time. So with that, I would like to thank you for your presence and participation in this meeting. And I'd like to sign off. I'm Marzuki. I'm a Neuro-Semantics trainer and meta coach. And I wish you an exceptional quality of life filled with happiness, creativity, and fulfillment. Until we meet again, God bless. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Marzuki.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good day, Miss Bobby. Good day, Miss Bobby.